Welcome to the High Income Business Writing Podcast, helping you propel your writing business to a whole new level. And now, here's your host, Ed Gandia.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the High Income Business Writing Podcast, the number one podcast for freelance writers, copywriters, and solo marketers who want to earn more in less time doing work they love for better clients. With over 1.3 million downloads from listeners just like you across 101 countries. Today, we're going to talk about something I read on LinkedIn a few weeks ago that got me pretty fired up. And it was a post from a lady by the name of Maria Delano, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's the CEO of Kalina Marketing. And that post sparked a pretty heated debate about AI in writing. And honestly, it's exactly the conversation we need to be having right now. So I'm glad that Maria put it out there, and I'm glad people responded to it. Last time I checked, it had hundreds of comments and likes. It was a great discussion. But it wasn't Maria who got me fired up. It wasn't even so much what she said. The reason I decided to dedicate a whole episode of the podcast to the topic of that post is that it was a clear example of a conversation we're having about AI that, even though I'm glad she raised it, the conversation as a whole, the argument that's being made, in my opinion, is not very productive. And I should probably restate that. It's not that it's unproductive. It's simply that it's not as nuanced. The conversation is not as nuanced as it needs to be in order to be helpful. So just like with so many other important topics, the conversation around AI has quickly turned into a binary argument. And you know what I'm talking about, right? You're either in favor of X idea or you're against it. You're either on the side of this issue, on this particular side, or you're on the other side. There's no in between. You either love this person or you think she's pure evil. This all probably sounds very familiar. And as you can imagine, there are many problems with what I would call false choices like this. For one, they lack nuance. They're one-dimensional. And in the case of AI, they're keeping us from discussing the more important details about this technology that will change so much about business and humanity. So, yeah, I think both sides of this binary debate are missing something crucial. And that's what I want to at least attempt to dig into today. So let me read Maria's full post for context. Here's what she wrote, and I quote, "I, as a client for freelance writers, care whether people use AI or not. I won't work with someone if they use AI on content they produce for our agency or our clients. Sometimes we have to accommodate clients using AI internally, but we minimize those. AI, or rather LLMs, are not neutral tools. They frequently make stuff up, reproduce most statistically common, forgettable, and shallow ideas, produce terrible quality writing, and contribute to the continuing devaluing of content and creative work. Yes, too many in the mainstream marketing and business worlds have accepted these tools as a given, but not everyone has. If someone submits content that I initially like, but then learn it's AI generated, I would still reject it. Knowing it's AI generated means I cannot trust that it's fully original work, and that the thoughts within it are no longer represent the views of the writer or the brand. Instead, they reflect the data that AI model was trained on. It's not effective, as marketing is meant to be connection, building trust, and serving as a public representation of how humans in a particular organization think and what they believe. Regurgitating the entire internet, as AI tools are designed to do, means giving up your differentiation. We read writing to connect to other people, learn from their experience, and hopefully grow to trust the brand they are representing. The use of AI, even tweaked or edited by a human, is still a lie. If you don't disclose the use of AI tools, you are lying. Hiding it is equivalent to getting away with a lie. Fact-checking AI output isn't enough. Research shows that as much as people might say or perceive that they're being careful, the way these particular tools are designed makes users think less critically in evaluating the output. Humans are also bad at discerning misinformation in general, which applies to any AI output. And I got the sources in the comment. No, AI is not the same as human creativity. Look into the work of neuroscientist Antonio Damasio. One of his patients, Elliot, lost the ability to feel emotions due to brain damage. He became the perfectly cold, logical, rational person that we so often valorize in business. And guess what? He lost the ability to make decisions. He became completely disabled because he needed to feel as well as think. No LLM can feel anything. They are flying blind, like Elliot, simulating logic without the emotions that allow humans to actually prioritize what matters, make connections, and do truly intellectual or creative work. Okay, so that's her full post. And you can see these are some very strong words. It's a very strong opinion. Now, before I dive into my response, I want to be really clear about something. I genuinely understand where Maria is coming from. I respect what seems like a strong commitment to quality and authenticity on her part and her firm's part. Look, we've all seen the terrible AI generated content that's flooding the internet. You know what I'm talking about as a writer. Those generic, soulless articles that clearly weren't touched by human thought. The made up statistics, the shallow regurgitation of common ideas that have no real insight, the predictable writing formulas that we're all getting really tired of. So I get it. And when Maria talks about protecting the craft of writing and maintaining trust with audiences, she's defending something good. She's defending something that I believe, and I'm sure you do, we believe it's important. And let's be honest, many clients have been burned by writers who prompt ChatGPT and then they just copy and paste the output and then send an invoice for quote unquote original work. That's beyond lazy. That really crosses an ethical line. There's also a real risk that over-reliance on AI tools could atrophy your critical thinking skills if we're not careful. And I get that. I think that the fear and concern around that is a little overblown. Here again, I think that's a very nuanced issue, the topic for another episode. But I do worry about that sometimes. Although I think we have to be careful about how we think about this and what specifically we're referring to when we're talking about like critical thinking and cognitive skills. That's something we certainly should take into account. So bottom line is these are valid concerns from someone who clearly cares about maintaining high standards in our industry, and I totally respect that. However, and this is a big however, in her passionate defense of pure human writing, I believe that Maria is making several incorrect assumptions about what AI actually is, how many professional writers are using it, and what clients truly value. The reality is way more nuanced than this AI bad, human good dichotomy that she's presenting in this post. But sadly, this is where we are as a society right now, at least in the US. I can't really speak for other parts of the world. I know some other parts of the world aren't as polarized as we are, but we are here in the US. And in this country, every important topic gets flattened into a binary choice. Seems like everything that's genders any kind of emotion becomes a tribal battle where you are either with us or against us. And somehow we've lost the ability to hold multiple truths at once. We've lost the ability to explore the gray areas where most of life actually happens, where there really aren't clear black and white answers, where it depends kind of solution or answer or conversation. And that loss of nuance is not just intellectually lazy, it actively harms both progress and understanding. Now, let me be clear. I'm not attacking Maria here. I'm not saying that she's intellectually lazy. I just want to really talk about the general trend of polarized conversations where all the nuance is thrown out the window. So let me walk you through what I see as the 10 false assumptions in Maria's argument. And then I want to share something even more important, which is what I think is really going to separate successful writers from everyone else going forward. One quick point. When I say false assumptions, again, I'm not implying that Maria was trying to deceive in any way. I could tell from her posts and her replies to those who responded to her posts that she really believes and means what she said. But I also believe that many of her assertions were based on assumptions that are either ill-informed or miss the critical nuance required to do this complex topic justice. So here we go. In no particular order, the assumptions that I felt were false. The first one is that AI use equals deception. One of the strongest claims that Maria makes is that using AI is the same as lying to your clients, that if you lean on a tool like ChatGPT or Claude, you're essentially being deceptive. But here's the problem with that line of thinking. It ignores the reality that AI, like any other technology, can be used transparently and responsibly as an enhancer of our capabilities. I mean, think about it, right? When I run my draft through, let's say, Grammarly, am I lying? When I use Google to dig up a relevant stat or find a better way to phrase something, am I deceiving my clients? I don't think so. These are just tools in my professional toolkit. So what about if I use a human editor or proofreader on some of my long-form drafts just to ensure the piece is dialed in? Is that deceptive? Because, by the way, I used plenty of those when I did a lot of long-form copy, like some of the longer white papers, and I wanted to make sure I nailed it. Or what if I'm scaling my business and I have a team of writers I work with who help me from research all the way to first draft, and then I take it from there? Is that unethical? That it wasn't me? Maybe my name is on the business, but I'm using a team to create the work. Well, I really believe that AI belongs in that same category. And you might argue that, yeah, but that's not a human. But again, if we think of all of these people and tools as just pieces, I'm not trying to dehumanize the writers, but if tools in the toolbox, when you look at it that way, it doesn't have to be a replacement for your thinking. And in fact, it shouldn't be. If anything, it should be an extension of your thinking using these various tools and other people. The distinction here is how you use these and whether you're honest about it. Because let's be clear, if you're secretly copying, pasting raw AI output and passing it off as 100% your own, yeah, that's going to be a problem. That is deception. But it's more nuanced than that. Using AI thoughtfully and disclosing that as part of your process is no different than saying, I use research assistants, or I rely on editing software, or I have a team of writers and editors I work with internally. So yes, have an AI policy, disclose that policy in your client contracts, have conversations with clients who ask about how you use AI, and be ready to have a calm and confident conversation about that. I've said it before. I truly believe this idea that you're being deceptive or feeling bad that you're using AI in some of your workflows, this is quickly becoming a thing of the past. I predict that it won't be long before AI use in your workflows is going to be expected of you. It's going to be, clients are going to just assume and expect that you use AI in some way, shape, or form. Not because clients are going to want you to do it, not because they want AI to be part of the process necessarily. It's going to happen indirectly because you're not going to be able to compete otherwise. In a world where too many other writers are delivering a higher volume of high quality work and throwing in other complementary capabilities in less time than you can. I'm not saying they're giving them away. I say complementary as in complementing the work that they're doing, the writing deliverables. So I would even argue, though, that the process and set of systems around creating content is going to drastically change. I think we're looking at myopically if we're thinking this is strictly a productivity and efficiency tool, because we're not just talking about efficiency improvements here. I mean, when you think about it, if suddenly over the next couple of years, every writer is using AI in their workflows, and now their capability gaps are gone. So it's not just a productivity issue, it's the ability for them to do more and better work to deliver a greater amount of value to their clients. We're really kind of getting now into a complete unbundling or rebundling of value here and a corresponding overhaul of the entire creative process in marketing. And here's the irony. Writers who assume that AI use automatically means being deceptive, I actually think those people are flattening the conversation. They're ignoring the middle ground where AI is neither a villain or a savior. It's just, again, it's just a tool, a powerful tool, of course, but it's still a tool. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, AI output equals regurgitating the entire internet. Okay, this fundamentally misunderstands how modern LLMs work and how they can be directed. Yes, AI can produce generic statistical averages. In fact, if you don't give it context, that's what it's going to give you. It's a probabilistic model. It's going to essentially revert to the means. But in the hands of a skilled professional, AI becomes a thought partner that helps explore angles and insights that you might never have considered on your own. And let's clear up a common misconception here. LLMs aren't just scraping the internet and spitting sentences back at you as it gathered them. They don't have a giant filing cabinet of paragraphs or whole chapters of books that they're pulling from. What they do is far more abstract. They basically turn all that training data into math, into numbers, patterns, probabilities, which means the words you see are newly generated content or words in real time. They're not copy pasted from some hidden database. You can't say, hey, give me the first couple of chapters of that book that I read last year titled whatever. I need to use that. I need to work with that to help me with this draft. Like, it can't do that. It's not going to give you that. So that's a really important point. We need to all understand that, because even though there's a lot of controversy around the training data and how these tools have trained, or how these companies have trained these tools, totally separate conversation. I don't want to get into that here. The ethics of that, because it's definitely questionable. We have to understand that it's not going to spit it out the way in which it took it in, okay? And here's something that really gets me about this claim that AI produces forgettable and shallow ideas and terrible quality writing, as Maria claimed. You know what? I agree with her. Of course it does. If you give it, again, little to no context and just say, write me a blog post about marketing trends and the SaaS industry. Yeah, you're going to get bland, average content. And if you use that content as you get it from the LLM without editing, you're turning in garbage, okay? But why are we assuming that that's how all writers use or should use LLMs? We just ask them to crank out a full piece with no context and then copy paste it straight to the client. That's like saying that Microsoft Word produces terrible writing because someone opened it up, randomly mashed the keyboard, and the result was gibberish. The writers I know who are using AI effectively are spending time crafting detailed briefs. They're providing really good nuanced content to the AI about the client, the audience, the brand voice. They're feeding it examples of successful work. They're using it to explore different angles. And then they're picking the best parts and pieces and then reworking them as needed. So they're having iterative conversations with these LLMs, refining and directing it towards something unique and valuable, and then just using their own brain and their own skills to create something really solid. They're using it even as a brainstorming partner, a research assistant, a 1st draft generator that they then completely transform from there. but they're not always using it for writing. There are so many other uses than just step of writing the draft. So many other phases of a project where AI can be extremely helpful. So it just pains me when I see this argument on and on and on distilled into an overly simplistic AI for writing discussion. For the love of all that's holy, can we move beyond that myopic view of these tools? If all you're talking about is you're giving it a quick little prompt, it's giving you output, and you're using that and you're turning that in, that's not the discussion we need to be having. Is it going to happen? Yes. Does that happen all the time? Yes. Is that productive? I don't think it is. I think we need to move beyond that. The bottom line here is that saying AI only produces shallow, forgettable content is to admit you don't know how to use it properly. It's like a chef saying a food processor only makes mush because, I don't know, they've ever only turned it on high and then just walked away and come back 30 minutes later and like, that's not what I wanted. This is terrible. Okay, well, depends on how you use the tool, right? All right, enough of that one. Third point I wanted to address is this idea that human judgment becomes compromised. The claim that people become less critical when using AI assumes that professionals just abandon their expertise. But that's not been my experience. Seasoned writers, talented writers, don't just turn off their brains when they fire up Claude or ChatGPT. They use AI as a tool, one tool among many, applying the same critical thinking that they always have applied to their work. If anything, my experience has been that AI forces us to become better editors, better strategic thinkers, because now we have to evaluate not just our own work, but also the outputs that the AI gives us. Not only that, we have to think more critically about what we might be missing. We got to look at the full picture and say, where are the gaps? Where are the problems? What do I need to improve here? What's missing? What's good? What do I definitely want to keep? How can this be reworked, reordered? And we have to do that, not just when we get an output from an LLM. We also have to think critically in order to prompt these tools well. Like prompting is an art form. And we have to get super clear with ourselves about what we're trying to accomplish before we prompt and how we need to go about doing the work. Otherwise, the prompt is going to be garbage. The output's going to be garbage, right? So it starts with getting really, really clear with yourself and thinking critically. Above all, working with these tools requires a strong level of judgment and discernment. That's a uniquely human quality. And there's zero indication that these tools are on their way to developing that capability. They have no point of view. They have no lived experience. They have no consciousness. And in fact, their intelligence is a totally different type of intelligence from that of humans. That's one thing that virtually all experts agree on is the way they're able to achieve what they can achieve is a totally different way that humans would go about it. Okay. And for a long time, the problem with AI is the experts and the scientists were trying to replicate the human brain. And eventually, and I don't know the full story of it, they realized we got to approach this problem from a totally different angle. This is not how computers are going to be able to do it. And that's when they really got breakthroughs. So let's not fall prey to this idea that we're going to lose our capacity to exercise good judgment. That simply is not true unless, of course, you choose to do that, which is always your right. But that right, that choice was never dependent on AI. People have been making terrible decisions for thousands and thousands of years. This is not just a 21st century problem. All right, the fourth idea that I wanted to address is that AI-assisted work isn't original. This false dichotomy between pure human and let's just call it AI-contaminated work ignores something fundamental, that all creative work builds on existing knowledge. Every writer draws from what they've read, learned, experienced, right? When you quote an article or when a metaphor pops into your head because of a book you read, 10 years ago, is that unoriginal? Of course not. It's the natural process of synthesis. That's what creativity is, taking existing inputs and shaping them into something new. Using AI to help organize your thoughts or explore ideas doesn't make the final work less original than using a stack of research articles, a mind map, or even a conversation with a colleague. In fact, in many cases, the writer's judgment and the way they reshape that raw input is what ensures the final work is uniquely theirs. This assumes readers can somehow detect AI assistance and that they care. This argument of AI assisted work is an original, by the way. That's what I'm referring to. It also assumes value comes from process rather than from results. Here's what actually builds trust: delivering genuine value, solving real problems, maintaining consistency. Whether you used AI to help research industry trends, organize your thoughts, look at your argument from different angles, outline a piece, refine your prose, that matters way less than the quality and the relevance of what you deliver. Clients and audiences judge you on outcomes. And does that message, they want to know if the message resonates. They want to know if it moves them to act. Does it reflect the brand authentically? Right? So these are the more important questions, especially in a commercial setting, in a content marketing, copywriting, commercial writing setting. These are the things that are going to stick. Okay, the sixth point that I wanted to address is this idea that AI users are taking shortcuts or being lazy. Look, the use of effective AI, I should say, requires significant skill and judgment. Again, you can't just use these tools blindly and expect great outcomes. So no, it's not about being lazy. It's about being strategic. But here's what I also think is happening underneath some of this kind of pushback: a sense of status and fairness. It's that old, well, look, I did it the hard way, so you should too mentality. It's the, what I like to call the Protestant work ethic lens, as if struggling through every draft by hand somehow makes the end product more noble. Listen, I get that. I was raised that way. It's like, it's hard work. You're only going to get there through really, really hard work. And then the conditioning becomes, gosh, if any part of this process was easy, I somehow cheated, right? But let's be honest. Clients don't pay us for how much we sweat. They don't pay us for the fact that you didn't sleep barely at all the night before the deadline because you were so worried about, did you do your very best? Is this going to land? What do they pay us for? They pay us for results, for outcomes. And by results, I don't mean that, that achieved a very specific ROI. I'm talking about whatever results and good outcomes means for them. AI handles some of the grunt work so that writers can focus on higher level, higher value activities like strategic thinking, creativity, and the high level thought process that will truly serve a client. That's not laziness. That's just smart resource allocation. And in a competitive market, refusing to use the best tools available doesn't make you virtuous. It just makes you slower. And pretty soon, it may very well put you out of business, unfortunately. These tools are not creative. I used to think years ago, before AI, that creativity was basically the process of connecting all these seemingly unrelated dots and putting in and creating something new from that. And yeah, there's definitely that part of it. But now with AI, I see that there's another incredibly important element to creativity. So these tools do an amazing job of pattern recognition and connecting dots, and they do it in seconds. Things that would take you years to be able to do, sort through that many data points and put together in that way. What they can't do, I mentioned earlier, they don't have a point of view. They don't have judgment, discernment, and taste. That's the human element. So the most important part of creativity is not just a pattern recognition and the, putting new thing or putting all these old ideas together into something new. It's the judgment to know when that something new is actually good and when it's not. To me, that's the full picture of creativity. Okay, moving on. The seventh claim or idea that I wanted to address is that emotions are required for all business writing. And look, emotions matter in decision making, of course, but not all business content requires deep emotional investment. So, in my opinion, Maria is conflating neuroscience findings about decision making with content creation. Now, I might be wrong, but that's the way I'm reading it. Humans still provide the emotional intelligence, the strategic thinking, and understanding of audience psychology. AI just helps them work more efficiently and effectively through this process. And these two things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, a lot of business writing is about clarity, it's about precision, it's about delivering the right information at the right time. Think technical guides, compliance documents, internal memos. These don't need sweeping emotional depth, but they still benefit from human oversight to make sure that the tone and the context align with the audience. It's a very, again, I keep using this word, it's a very nuanced thing that's uniquely human. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next one. Number 8, it's all zero sum thinking about tool usage. Again, this presents the choice as a binary choice when reality offers many, many possibilities. When you use AI effectively, you're not abandoning human creativity, right? I just talked about this. These tools can sift through mountains of data and connect dots like no human can. Okay, that is their type of intelligence that they're really, really good at. But guess what? Only a human can run the output through lived experience. That, in my mind, again, that's creativity. It's not just about combining things to create something new. It's about knowing if that new thing is worth putting out into the world. The most successful AI plus human approach will likely involve expanding capabilities through thoughtful integration, not through replacing core skills that you currently have that are super, super valuable. So it's not an either or scenario, it's both and. This is not a battle between those who insist on clinging to purity and those who outsource everything to machines. Rather, it's going to be a continually evolving discussion about when and how to lean on AI for efficiency and when and how to double down on your own insight, judgment, and craft. That balance is where the real competitive advantage lies. It's like a photographer refusing to use Photoshop because real photographers only work in a darkroom. Well, yeah, the darkroom still has value, but ignoring modern tools doesn't make your art more authentic. It's just going to limit what you can create. And that's a choice. It's okay. But you shouldn't impart your decisions and your values on everybody else. All right. Number 9, all AI use is the same. When you don't distinguish between copy paste AI content and AI is a research or an ideation partner, you're making the common mistake of lumping all AI usage into one category. But there's a vast spectrum here. So when I talk about the writing process in a content marketing or copywriting setting, I divide that process into 7 phases. And each phase has dozens and dozens of powerful use cases for incorporating AI, which is why I get so annoyed when the discussion about AI usage in our profession focuses so much, again, on just the writing part of the process, on creating the draft. That, to me, shows a lack of creativity and imagination because there's way more to AI integration in content marketing and copywriting than just the writing part. And saying that all AI use is the same is like saying that everyone who uses a kitchen knife is doing the same thing, whether they're chopping vegetables for a gourmet meal or slapping together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The tool is identical, but the skill and the intent behind it make all the difference. So I'll leave that one there. Not all AI use is the same. All right, my final point here. Writers who use AI are less valuable. That was one less indirect claim that I got from Maria's post. This assumes AI-enhanced writers produce inferior work, but it completely misses that AI-equipped writers can deliver more strategic value. If you're already a skilled practitioner, your capability ceiling has truly been removed over the past couple of years. You're no longer limited by what you personally know. You can now do things that you couldn't do a few years ago, like confidently pitch, land, and deliver projects that would have been outside your wheelhouse before because maybe you didn't know the domain really well, or you hadn't done that type of work before, or you didn't know that industry to a level where you felt comfortable taking on this opportunity. And AI can become an amazing partner to help you get up to speed very, very quickly. So I say all this to say that everything else being equal, a strong writer equipped with AI is more valuable than one without it. AI is not going to make us less valuable as writers. I've said this before in recent episodes, but it bears repeating. These AI models can do incredible things, but again, they're not creative. They don't have a point of view. They don't have taste, judgment, or discernment. In fact, they're terrible at those things, which happen to be what humans are great at. I think the more we recognize where they excel and where we excel, and then where they fall short and where we fall short, the easier it will be to find where there's true complementary synergies in this AI plus human or human plus AI equation. And that's, I think, the conversation we need to explore further. Okay, so after addressing these 10 false assumptions, let me share my prediction for where this industry is heading. By this industry, I don't know if we can call it an industry, but freelance writing, freelance copywriting, being a solo marketer, right? Where you're doing a lot of writing for clients. I don't think either side of this debate has it quite right, at least not the extreme sides of the debate. So I see a future where you need both the AI and the human. I think it's pretty evident, or I hope it is, after what I've shared with you today. And by most accounts, it's going to be a long time before AI can replicate these extremely valuable abilities that we have as humans, if ever, right? It's amazing that I heard this in a podcast the other day that the things that are super easy for humans to do are extremely hard for AI to learn, and vice versa. Things like common sense and trick questions, or relational and causal reasoning, or applying intuitive knowledge, or even learning from experience. All these things are surprisingly difficult for LLMs. Let me give you an example. Take this classic riddle. If you're running a race and you pass the person in second place, what place are you in now? Well, you and I, if we think about it, would immediately say, well, if I just pass second place, the person in second place, that I'm now in second place. But believe it or not, AI systems get completely tangled up in this because they overthink the logic and often say you're in first place now, which doesn't make sense. Here's another one that really highlights how differently AI processes relationships. Let's say that I tell you that Sarah's mother has 4 daughters named April, May, June, and fill in the blank. So what's the 4th daughter's name? Well, you probably smile and say Sarah, because it's obvious when you think about it. I was about to say July, right? That's part of the trick, but it's Sarah. You've already given that clue. But AI models frequently generate completely new names or miss that clue entirely. But here's maybe the most fascinating and important difference. So we humans can learn something new in the middle of a conversation and then start using it immediately. So if I told you, hey, I need you to start referring to this client's core product as a, I don't know, logistical orchestrator rather than a logistics SaaS application, you'd remember to do that when writing copy. But an LLM won't do it. You have to keep reminding it of that, or you need to provide it with project files and guidance that will help it remember. It won't do that on its own like a human would. It doesn't adapt. And that seamless, permanent adaptation to new information within a single interaction is something that we as humans do effortlessly, but AI systems can't. They really rely on their current level of training. They just don't adapt, and that really limits them. Then there is being able to communicate with someone at a deep emotional level and truly be empathetic in that conversation. That's another really difficult thing for an AI to do. Now, you know what they're really good at? I've said it before, pattern recognition, right? That, you feed it 40 documents that are really dense and deep and ask it to find these particular patterns, synthesize some of that content, and it does it in 5 seconds. Human just can't do that. Okay. So I believe the writers who will thrive won't be the ones avoiding AI completely and living in fear of contaminating their pure human creativity. But they're also not going to be the ones who are just collecting prompts and blindly copying and pasting AI outputs and turning that in as their own work, right? So the edge cases aren't where the future lies. I predict that the ones who will win are going to develop something far more sophisticated than that. And I call that skill creative synthesis. So creative synthesis is the ability to orchestrate AI capabilities with strategic thinking, relationship dynamics, and hard-won experience. And to do that and just shape all of that into solutions that weren't possible before. So picture this. You're standing in front of a client challenge, and in that moment, you're synthesizing a bunch of different elements. You've got deep understanding of their actual challenge and their context. You understand the full spectrum of available AI and human capabilities. You know marketing psychology. You know strategic frameworks. You're drawing on years of your hard-won professional experience. And you get the client relationship dynamics and the business realities in front of you. You're combining all of these elements into something genuinely new and valuable with the help of AI tools. This is where I believe the real magic will happen. So not in avoiding AI, not in using AI for everything, which is the other extreme, but in that creative moment where you're thinking, okay, so I understand what the client is really trying to accomplish here. I know their industry dynamics. I can feel the political undercurrents. I understand their audience's psychology. I have this toolkit of AI capabilities in front of me. I have my own strategic experience, my own lived experience as a human. I know what's worked in similar situations in the past, but I do have some knowledge or capability gaps. And I want to be honest about those. I'm going to put them down on paper. I'm going to use then AI to see if I can fill those gaps. So by using one or more of these tools, I'm going to creatively combine all of this into something that will actually move the needle for the client. That's going to produce something really, really powerful. That right there is a super skill. That's what will make certain writers irreplaceable, as the craft of writing, the act of writing alone, becomes increasingly commoditized. The mechanics of producing the work, as that continues to become commoditized, as there is a continued race to the bottom there, creative synthesis is going to be your competitive advantage. So when Maria said in her post that AI users can't create original work or that they're regurgitating the internet, I believe she's completely missing this creative synthesis layer. I obviously can't speak for her. I feel a little bad, just spending this whole episode on her post. And if she's listening, I don't know if she'll even hear about this. I welcome feedback. I welcome comments. But it sounds from just reading her post, taking everything at face value, like she's imagining someone hitting the generate button and calling it a day. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe she wasn't just talking about that. Maybe she was talking about one step removed from that as well. But I don't know. I think that's like saying that a master chef lacks creativity because they use a food processor to create rice cauliflower, right? We talked earlier about how, I don't know, I just let it run. 30 minutes later, it was just mush. What's wrong with this thing? Well, what if you're using tools in the kitchen to get some things done? Sometimes you got to use a microwave to quickly reheat some chicken stock. Are you going to lose one of your Michelin stars because of that? Or how about an artist, a musician who ceases to be an artist because now they use digital audio workstations or a beautiful drum track from a Roland drum machine? Do they cease to become an artist because they're using these tools? I hope not, because I think if you saw how many of today's musicians are using these digital tools, you would have to write off 95% of artists out there. So it just doesn't make sense. I predict that the writers who thrive, again, are going to actually amplify their own creativity with AI. They're going to use it to handle much of the grunt work so they can spend more time in that creative synthesis space where the real value lies. So let me break down how I believe this is likely going to develop. And by that, I mean, here's how I think writers will evolve as they become more fluent in these tools, if they choose to, and then they start to use them and leverage them in more creative and useful ways. So the first phase I would call manual foundation. This is where many writers currently find themselves. They're either doing everything by hand with no AI help for whatever reason. Maybe they don't believe in it, like Maria, or maybe they just haven't really dug in. They're trying random AI tools sometimes, but getting scattered, inconsistent results. And I don't know. I think this is where a lot of people want writers to stay. And, where a lot of writers want everybody else to stay. Phase 2 is what I call AI enhanced execution. So the first breakthrough typically happens that moves you to phase 2 when you start developing predictable AI systems for things like research, brainstorming, outline, and drafting. Not a final draft, but maybe creating a Franken-draft. You're not copy pasting, you're orchestrating, right? Now you're an orchestrator. You're kind of using these tools and using good judgment as to what you're going to use, what you're not going to use, how you can combine some of these things. All right, phase 3 is what I like to call AI amplified operations. And at this stage, you're not just using AI for drafting and brainstorming, you're weaving it into the entire way you run your business. So AI becomes a true thinking partner. You're using it to spot hidden opportunities with clients that you might have overlooked before. You're mapping out projects faster, more strategically. You're revising and polishing your creative work with sharper feedback loops that you've created. You're repurposing content into multiple formats without doubling your workload. You're even using it to help with prospecting or crafting better proposals, shaping new services. So in other words, AI is helping you operate at a higher level. So it's no longer just about pure execution assistance like it was in phase 2. And then there's phase 4. And this is where creative synthesis mastery just unlocks a whole new set of possibilities. You're not just integrating AI into your processes. You're now teaching clients how to integrate it into their own processes and workflows. Maybe you're offering expanded services that go way beyond traditional writing. You could be scaling your business because AI systems are now multiplying your capacity without requiring more of your hours. So at this level, you start stepping into more of a leadership role. You're positioning yourself as a guide who helps clients navigate their own AI transformation. And you're even finding ways to codify and monetize your knowledge by turning your expertise into products, programs, intellectual property that generates value far beyond billable hours. Lots of possibilities here. I'm probably not doing it justice, but this really opens up lots of different things that we haven't even thought of yet. Okay. This is a stage where you stop playing defense and you start shaping the future. So here's what I believe Maria and others who share her view don't fully grasp. The gap between writers who just use AI tools and those who master creative synthesis is going to grow every single month for the next few years. And think about the difference between someone who can follow a recipe, for example, and a master chef who can walk into any kitchen and then see what's available, understand all the diner's preferences, feel the mood of the room, and create something extraordinary that fits the moment. That's mastery. That's human plus AI mastery. It's not deception. It's certainly not laziness. It's the reality of where we are and where this is all going. Frankly, whether we like it or not, I mean, this is where it's going. This is where it's going, and we can either choose to get on it or not get on the train. And that's fine. No judgment. I mean, I know that some people are choosing to opt out and they're just looking for something else to do. They don't want any part of this. And you know what? I respect that. I respect that. But if you're staying in this business, this is changing whether you like it or not. And here's the crucial part. AI can't do these things on its own. AI can't read the room in a client meeting. It can't feel those political undercurrents in an organization. It can't draw from years of experience to know when a client is saying one thing, but really meaning another thing. This ability to orchestrate all these elements in something valuable, that remains purely human. That's creative synthesis. And paradoxically, I believe that it becomes even more important as AI capabilities expand, not less. So the bottom line is this. The market is already starting to decide this debate. Clients are getting better and better results from writers who integrate AI skillfully into their process while maintaining that human judgment and creativity and strategic thinking that truly matters. That's going to make the difference. I predict these writers will increasingly capture bigger projects. They're going to deliver more strategic value. They're going to command higher fees, not because they're cheating, but because they've developed this creative synthesis capability that makes them genuinely indispensable. Meanwhile, writers who refuse to adapt based on ideological purity may find their opportunities shrinking. They're artificially limiting themselves in a market that is going to continue more and more to reward comprehensive value creation. Again, no judgment. There's no right or wrong. I think we just need to pick the path. We're at a fork in the road. You don't have to make a decision today, but this is all happening. So in my mind, the real question is, how can we develop the creative synthesis skills that will make us irreplaceable in an AI-enhanced world, if you choose to do so, if you choose to stay on this path? There are many ways to do that, but I would start by experimenting with these tools. I can't stress that enough. Actually carving time out every week, ideally every day or every couple of days, to play with these tools, to push them to their limit, to try new approaches and see what happens. If you haven't done much of that, I urge you to do so. You're not going to break them. I'm constantly surprised that people don't really want to push these things. They treat them like people. And well, I don't want to ask too much. These are not people. These are AI models. So test crazy ideas as you think of them. Keep a notebook. Write down crazy ideas. And, let's just see. I wonder what would come out of this prompt if I gave it to ChatGPT, right? Try it. You have nothing to lose. And if you're looking for more guidance and direction, if you're someone who prefers some structure for this experimentation, if you want a Sherpa to lead the way, then that's exactly what we help writers develop inside my AI Advantage Hub. We don't just focus on tool usage. We focus on building this creative synthesis mastery that I believe will make the difference between surviving and thriving in the years ahead. So I'm going to be making a very big announcement very soon, about in a week or so, about my AI Advantage Hub. I'm adding something to it, something that I've been quietly working on all summer. And honestly, it's unlike anything that I've ever created or put out there before. It's going to give members of the Hub something that I don't think exists anywhere else in our industry. And this is something that's going to make, I believe and I hope, a very positive and meaningful difference in your business. because it's going to give you access to ideas and feedback and guidance that may have been out of reach for you in the past. So keep an eye out for it, because when I reveal this, I think it's going to change the way you think about what's possible for your business. So look, I know this is a lot to think about. I just dumped a bunch of ideas on you, and I know that this AI discussion might be creating some discomfort. Maybe you agree with Maria. Maybe you're somewhere in between. Maybe you agree with me. That doesn't matter. I mean, I hope I at least opened this discussion, added my opinions here, provided some good food for thought, because these are important conversations that we need to be having. But what I don't want is for you to get stuck in this false binary choice. This isn't about choosing extreme sides in some AI war. It's about figuring out how to remain valuable and relevant as the landscape continues to shift beneath our feet. Because make no mistake, it is shifting. And pretending otherwise, and I did, when ChatGPT came out in November 2022, for months, I just dug my head in the sand. I just did not want any of this to happen. I just thought, I don't have the time, the energy. And I eventually realized that pretending that it was just going to go away and blow over, that is the riskiest strategy of all. I'm Ed Gandia. Thank you for listening today. And until next time, keep doing what you do best, but maybe think about how AI could help you do it even better in a way that makes it even more fun. Have a great rest of your day. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And just a quick reminder to grab your free copy of my latest book, Earn More in Less Time: The Proven Mindset, Strategies, and Actions to Prosper as a Freelance Writer. You can get your free copy at b2blauncher.com, where you will also find the detailed show notes to this and all my other episodes. Enjoy and have a great day.